Well, I suppose one more 12th Doctor video essay wouldn't kill anyone. Also, a quick little announcement, I have a Patreon now. If you pledge, you will get different perks, like whatever's on screen. I haven't thought of the perks yet as I'm recording this. But yeah, I just want to make it clear, don't feel like you have to pledge. Like, I'm not struggling financially, I promise. But yeah, if you enjoy the stuff I do, and you want to give a little bit more support, it is massively appreciated, honestly. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Alright, let's do this one last time. So, a couple of years ago, I made a nearly 4-hour video essay recapping the Peter Capaldi era of Doctor Who, going over the themes, narratives, and arcs that I think go largely underappreciated, and trying to put into words why I consider it my favourite period of the show. But I can't lie, it's about time I told you guys the uncomfortable truth. As I said, it's been a couple of years, and I've changed a lot as a person in that time. And now, when I look back on the Capaldi era, I still love it. Yeah, don't worry, my opinions on the 12th Doctor haven't changed. This is still very much my favourite era of Doctor Who. But as for my original video, I don't know. Frankly, I don't like going back to my videos after I finish them, so I can't tell you exactly what I think of it if I watched it now. But from what I can remember, I doubt it'd hold up very well. I listened to a bit of it not too long ago, and the main thing that put me off was just how dull and flat my delivery was. I sound dead inside, probably because I kinda was. But yeah, from what I can remember, the video definitely has glaring issues. And had I known how big the video was gonna get, I probably would have been a bit more mindful of those issues. I'm not embarrassed about the video, it still clearly resonated with many people, which is all I really wanted, so I'm not getting rid of it or anything. I just thought it was time for me to make a slightly more abridged, consolidated video that discusses the overall narratives of the Capaldi era in a concise, less monotone way. This will hopefully be my last video covering the entire Capaldi era. I'm fully aware the 12th Doctor is to my channel what David Tennant is to Doctor Who, so hopefully I can go out with the definitive summary of my favourite Doctor, just like he did. Let's talk about why the Peter Capaldi era of Doctor Who is an emotionally mature masterpiece. The 12th Doctor's first series is often regarded as his weakest, and I am inclined to agree. That's not to say I think it's bad, I still really like it, but I do think it pales in comparison to Series 9 and 10. Personally, Series 8 works for me. I still enjoy it, although I do understand why episodes like Kill the Moon may have turned away some people. The series tries a little too hard to make the Doctor contentious and unlikable, and the show is self-aware about the Doctor's behaviour. But I do get why some people felt dissatisfied without seeing the narrative play out in full. The Doctor's arc in Series 8 is an interesting one. He grapples with his own morality and sense of self in a way that sets up the general narrative for Series 8 to 10 while telling a complete story on its own. These three series deconstruct the Doctor to his most basic principles while dissecting the character in a way the show had never really done before. But to explain that, we need to look at the Doctor as a character over the last 7 series. When Doctor Who came back in 2005, a big change to the lore was the introduction of the Time War. An endless, incomprehensibly horrific war between the Time Lords and the Daleks, with the whole of creation at stake. The Doctor was the one to end the war, destroying his home planet of Gallifrey, killing all the Time Lords, sort of, and the Daleks. Sort of. The Time War was an integral part of the Doctor's character for the entire show up until this point. So much of his personality and behaviour and actions centred around the guilt and trauma that I imagine would come hand in hand with committing mass genocide against your own people. The show created some great narratives and arcs out of this, be it the 9th Doctor's whole journey over Series 1, or the 10th Doctor becoming corrupted by his own power in the waters of Mars, before being fully prepared to disregard his promise to never kill in cold blood as soon as he finds out the Time Lords are returning. The Time War narrative came to an end in the 50th anniversary special, when the 3 Doctors reflect on what they stand for, what the name of the Doctor truly means. How they always find a better way, always make an effort to live in hope, and to at least try and do the right thing. And so they all team up to save Gallifrey. One episode later, the Doctor spends centuries guarding one small village of people, choosing to give up his last life and die of old age rather than let another world be torn apart by war. The Doctor was so sure he would die here, and after all those years, he didn't. The Doctor begins a whole new regeneration cycle, a new lease of life, and he doesn't know how to handle it. Like I said, the trauma of the Time War was an integral part of the Doctor's actions and behaviour for the entire show up until this point. But with the war well and truly over, the Doctor isn't sure who he is without that guilt hanging over him, which is where the whole "am I a good man" thing comes from. He's at a very existential and uncertain point in his life. This also ties in with his new face. He questions why he subconsciously chose this face, believing there to be some deeper meaning behind it. Of course, it's the same face as Caecilius from the fires of Pompeii back in Series 4, who the Doctor saved from the destruction of Mount Vesuvius, and it ends up being a reminder that he always tries to save people. But beyond that, the Doctor's new face also highlights where he is at this point in his life. After the Time War, the Doctor wore a younger facade, each new face looking younger than the last, as he tried to mentally regress and free himself from the age and weariness the Time War left him with. But with the war over, he doesn't need to hide behind that youthful pretense. He feels ready to be more honest, to show his age. The 10th and 11th Doctors in particular ramped up the silly side of their personalities, trying as hard as they could to hide the grizzled war veteran that lives within them. They wore a younger face and a younger personality, to be accepted by others and by themselves. But now the Doctor feels more free, and feels more ready to reflect on his own thoughts and morals without his motivations being dominated by guilt. The thing is, this freedom makes him feel lost, and he's unsure who he is now without that guilt. He takes on a more pragmatic persona, coming across as a lot more apathetic, not taking the time to mourn or even be graceful towards those who die. He'll even outright murder a cyborg in cold blood if it means protecting the human race. He's not behaving this way because he doesn't care. He might claim he doesn't care, but he clearly does underneath it all. He behaves like this because he sees it as the best course of action in a difficult moral circumstance. If he doesn't carry on and find the solution to the problem as quickly as he can, more people will die. It's a much bleaker take on the discussion of what it means to be the Doctor back in the 50th anniversary, to never give up and to always try and find the most pacifistic way of saving the day. But when the circumstances involve people dying no matter what, he has to make difficult decisions. The thing is, this isn't a thing exclusive to the 12th Doctor, it's just that he's a lot more brutally honest about his methods. There are scenarios where this behaviour does seem acceptable for the greater good, such as Mummy on the Orient Express. But there are instances beforehand where the Doctor takes this behaviour too far and is directly called out for it. The first example of this is Into the Dalek. The Doctor acts overly careless in this episode, outright joking about people who just died and willingly sacrificing people to save everyone else's lives. The others take issue with this, but he doesn't care. Until it's time for him to face the Dalek. The Doctor connects his mind to the Dalek, hoping to turn it good. But all he ends up doing is turning it into another kind of evil, as it latches onto the Doctor's own hatred towards the Daleks. The Doctor vastly overestimated his morality here, and it's the beginning of a much-needed reality check for him. The Doctor's question of whether he's a good man is a recurring motif across Series 8, but the word good has various interpretations. The Doctor calls Rusty a good Dalek, and Rusty repeats the sentence back. The Doctor meant good Dalek as in a Dalek that is good, whereas Rusty means that the Doctor is good at being a Dalek. Then, in Kill the Moon, he leaves Clara to make a difficult moral decision on her own, and he genuinely believes he was justified in doing this, that he was respecting her and allowing her an opportunity to grow in confidence, not realizing just how selfish and inconsiderate his behaviour is. The 12th Doctor's take on morality constantly evolves over his tenure. First, he's obsessed with being pragmatic and more open and honest than ever before. Then, in Series 9, his morals are heavily influenced by his relationship with Clara, which I'll talk more about in a bit. And Series 10 contains the conclusion to the Doctor's journey of morality, as he meets a healthy balance between those two perspectives. Series 10's Thin Ice contains a much more mellowed take on the 12th Doctor's seemingly inconsiderate nature. He retains the same core principle, focusing on solving the problem before more people die, but he's a lot less apathetic in his demeanour now. He's become a lot better at articulating and explaining his thoughts and motivations, and handles these situations with a lot more grace and eloquence, all of which leads into the summary of who the Doctor is and what they stand for in the Series 10 finale, which, once again, I'll come back to. The Doctor's struggle with who he is now comes to an end in the Series 8 finale, as he finally remembers who he is. He finally gets back in touch with who he was before the Time War. He spent so long grappling with the weight of being the last of his kind, the lonely god who holds without fathom. The lonely god who holds unfathomable power in his hands. But with Gallifrey saved, the Doctor is back to who he used to be. He's an idiot who travels the universe, experiencing the wonders of life and learning new things along the way. He really is just a madman in a box, and he accepts this. The Doctor, and the show itself, finally drop the baggage of the last of the Time Lords narrative, as the Doctor returns to the wandering bohemian he spent centuries longing to regress to again. It's honestly kind of funny when I see people say stuff like, New Who makes the Doctor too important, the Doctor should go back to being a cosmic hobo with no importance, when that's literally what happened in the Capaldi era. The same applies to the criticism that the show should be grittier and more mature. We already had that here. If you don't like the way these things were executed in this era, fair enough, you're allowed to think that. But it is just factually incorrect to claim New Who hasn't attempted these narratives. So yeah, that's the Doctor's narrative in Series 8. Now, let's move on to Series 9. Although, it's impossible to talk about the Doctor's arc in that series without discussing Clara, Queen of the Bisexuals. Now, I love Clara, but she is quite a divisive character in the fandom. A lot of people really don't like her, claiming she was too bland or that the show revolves around her too much. But I genuinely think she has the most interesting and nuanced character journey of any companion in the show to date, and I think her arc gets criminally overlooked and misunderstood. Clara first appeared in the Series 7 opener Asylum of the Daleks, and then again in The Snowmen, and then again in The Bells of St. John. Clara's main intrigue was that she kept showing up, saving the Doctor, and dying. The Doctor became obsessed with uncovering the mystery of this impossible girl. Also, he becomes kinda horny for her, but we don't talk about that. The Doctor and Clara build up a really strong relationship over Series 7, him being infatuated with her, and her always being there to pick him up when he falls. They develop a sort of reliance on one another that sows the seeds of their toxic relationship later on down the line. Clara begins to grow in confidence towards the end of Series 7, being willing to take charge and doing some quick thinking to get out of dangerous scenarios, as well as being the one to remind the Doctor what his name truly means. But when the Doctor regenerates, Clara feels lost, like she doesn't know who the Doctor is anymore. Clara's initial reaction to the 12th Doctor is a great bit of meta-commentary from the show. The Doctor's companion is the audience surrogate. We see the Doctor's adventures through their eyes, and Clara's unique circumstance as a companion makes her represent the audience in a perfect way for a post-regeneration story. As the audience, we know the Doctor regenerates every few years, and we all know that the Doctor has regenerated multiple times before. Despite this, it's incredibly common for significant portions of the show's audience to be unwilling to accept a new Doctor, or even give them a fair chance, with their initial reactions ranging from uncertainty to outright hatred. And that's more or less exactly how Clara feels. In the Series 7 finale, Clara entered the Doctor's timeline and met every single Doctor. Just like the audience, she knows the Doctor has changed several times, and that they're still fundamentally the same person every time. And yet she still feels unsure about this new Doctor. She might have seen all the previous Doctors, but she's now had to let go of her Doctor. Personally, as someone who also considered Matt Smith my Doctor and was uncertain about Capaldi at the time, I'm really glad this meta-commentary was there to confront 10-year-old me with how dumb it really is to complain when the character known for changing their face changes their face. By the end of the episode, Clara is convinced to stick with the Doctor, and really tries to be fair with him and give him a proper chance to figure himself out. But he keeps pushing things too far. We see this in his very first episode, when he abandons her and leaves her to gain intel and outsmart the villain on her own. She has grown in confidence during her adventures so far, but suddenly gets thrown into the deep end by this new Doctor she doesn't know or understand. And this keeps going. The 12th Doctor keeps behaving really selfishly, and it becomes harder and harder for her to defend him, as he keeps putting her in situations she doesn't think the 11th Doctor would do to her in a million years. And on top of that, she begins to live a double life as she meets Danny. A lot of people really don't like Danny, and to be honest, I think a lot of that dislike comes down to people viewing him in the same way they view Mickey and Rory. Which I do get, he does fill the same fundamental role as those two. But his narrative purpose across this series is different to them, and it does lead to a lot of people calling him boring by comparison. The thing about Mickey and Rory is that they grow in confidence and develop as characters during their time on the show, and slowly gain a taste for adventure. Danny is the opposite. He's served as a soldier, he's had his life of action already, and a traumatic event that caused him to give it all up. He's not companion material like Mickey or Rory, because he's not meant to be. He's meant to represent the safe and comfortable life Clara could lead if she gives up travelling with the Doctor. The Doctor can't comprehend that Danny is a soldier who gave it up to become a maths teacher. The 12th Doctor harbours an immense prejudice towards soldiers, a dislike which comes down entirely to projection. The Doctor doesn't like people that remind him of his days as a soldier, be it Jenny, the Meta Crisis, the War Doctor, or Danny. His prejudice also comes down to denial over the fact that he behaves like a general himself, willingly putting others in jeopardous situations for the sake of a tactical advantage. Clara struggles to balance these two lives, and it all comes crashing down in Kill the Moon, when the Doctor leaves her alone again in a difficult situation, pushing her too far and making her feel scared. So she finally rips into him for being careless about her safety, for being careless about Earth. She's finally done giving him a chance, and decides to leave him for good. This decision lasts for 5 minutes. Mummy on the Orient Express serves as the turning point in the Doctor and Clara's relationship. The very fact that Clara goes on this trip at all proves that she doesn't really want to give the Doctor up. If she genuinely wanted to quit, she would have done there and then, wouldn't she? And once again, the Doctor manipulates her. He takes her to a place where he assumed, or rather hoped, that there would be danger, as his way of proving himself to Clara, as well as getting her to lie for him. At the end of the episode, the Doctor has one last chance to get through to Clara, and explains his behaviour. He doesn't enjoy letting people die, but sometimes it's the only option. And sometimes he has to be cold and uncaring, because to waste time is to let more people die. He has tried to explain this in the moment, but the 12th Doctor just struggles to articulate his thoughts. The thing is, the Doctor's explanation here doesn't excuse his behaviour, and it especially doesn't justify the way he's treated her since regenerating. But she brushes it aside, because these adventures are an addiction to her, and she can't give them up. She makes the decision to prioritise the Doctor over Danny in her life, and the Doctor goes along with it because he doesn't want to be alone. Flatline, the following episode, sees the beginning of Clara's new character arc. With the Doctor out of the picture, Clara takes his place and has to act and think like him. And we see how the Doctor's speech at the end of the previous episode has affected her mentality. She has to lie to people and tell them she's going to save them, even though there's no guarantee they'll survive, because that's what the Doctor would do. Clara holds a mirror to the Doctor's behaviour throughout the series, and at the end, the double meaning of good from Into the Dalek comes back. Clara says she was good at being the Doctor, while he interprets the phrase as doing good. In the series finale, Danny suddenly dies, and the thing that gets to Clara is how ordinary his death was. All these aliens and mythical beings that she's encountered, and yet Danny dies in such an unremarkable way. She believed Danny would be safe in the real world, that he'd be a crutch she could always come back to, but now that's been taken. Not only that, but Clara's parents met when her mum saved her dad from being hit by a car, and that moment was given a lot of thematic weight in that episode. So Clara failing to be there for Danny symbolises a whole future that now will never be lived. So Clara gives the Doctor an ultimatum, threatening to throw away his TARDIS keys if he doesn't save Danny. She's learning to keep up with this new Doctor and is trying to match his manipulation and recklessness. And the Doctor lets her. He wants to see how far she'll go. This series started with the Doctor telling the villain not to make assumptions about the lengths he'll go to, and here he allows Clara the chance to push herself too. He takes advantage of her in her grief-stricken state before she cracks under the pressure forced on her by both the Doctor and herself. Clara has her moment of clarity and expects to be shunned by the Doctor, like she did to him. But he forgives her and decides to break the rules for her. Again, he doesn't want to be alone, but he almost admires her ambition. He can see the strong, capable person she's starting to become and isn't gonna let this betrayal ruin things, as he says with this earth-shattering line.
Do you think I care for you so little that betraying me would make a difference?
With Danny dead, Clara loses her last tether to normal life. Now her adventures with the Doctor are all she has to live for, and her arc of trying to be like the Doctor continues. Their relationship becomes rooted in toxicity, and how the two of them are barely distinguishable from one another. Almost like a hybrid. In Under the Lake, the Doctor tries to talk to Clara about how she's trying too hard to be like him. But as we've already seen, the 12th Doctor isn't great at putting his thoughts into words. Then in Before the Flood, when Clara finds out the Doctor is gonna die, she makes it about her and tells him to break the rules for her, which he attempts. The Doctor's Series 8 self briefly comes out as he lets O'Donnell die to test whether he could really change things. But this time, instead of dismissing her death as being necessary for the greater good, he says,
I'm changing history to save Clara.
This all builds up to Face the Raven, when Clara pushes her luck too far, becomes too convinced she's untouchable and just like the Doctor, and it backfires. Then the Doctor punches a wall for a few eons. We'll come back to this. I think Clara's journey as a character is really investing and incredibly underrated. And the way it ties into the 12th Doctor's journey of figuring out who he is, what he wants to do, and what he stands for. But now, let's talk about the real main character of the Capaldi era. You know her. She's so fine. She'd blow your mind. Missy is possibly my favourite character in all of Doctor Who. Her and the 12th Doctor just resonate with me in such a perfect way. I'd say the Doctor, Clara and Missy are the three main characters of this era, and each series focuses on them in a way. Series 8 focuses on the Doctor, Series 9 focuses on Clara, and Series 10 focuses on Missy. The Master, now Missy, is the Doctor's childhood friend, but their friendship fell apart as they grew up and their morals differed. Missy's whole thing at the start is that she wants the Doctor to see that they're the same. The Master always felt a reliance on the Doctor, constantly feeling inadequate to them, and so now she tries getting him to stoop to her level, tempting him into being corrupted by power. She also manufactures the Doctor's relationship with Clara, keeping them together and getting them to push each other further and further. She wants the Doctor and Clara to become indistinguishable, and in turn, the Doctor will become indistinguishable from her. She helps create the hybrid prophecy, because her goal is for the Doctor to become corrupted and cruel, like her. And again, in the Series 9 opener, she encourages him to kill a Dalek, telling him it killed Clara while she's trapped inside its casing, which yeah, is incredibly evil and fucked. But Missy's appearance in Series 9 is another sign of where she was headed, as she doesn't assume the role of the villain. She's still ruthless and evil, but is fundamentally on the same side as the Doctor and Clara, another discussion of the ambiguity of goodness. But Series 10 is where Missy becomes the most interesting. When she's about to die, she promises to turn good. A seemingly meaningless plea on the surface. Of course she'd say that while facing certain death. The thing is, she definitely knew the Doctor had messed with the execution rig and wasn't gonna kill her, and yet she still begged for him to teach her how to do better. The Doctor, having just suffered two great losses back to back, and having grown and changed a lot over this incarnation, wants to give his oldest friend in the universe a fair chance. So, Missy is imprisoned in a vault, and the Doctor helps her on her journey of healing. He tells her about his adventures, enticing her with all the danger and death while conveying the message that you can have fun and adventure in the universe without causing death and destruction unnecessarily. And Missy does make the effort. She helps the Doctor find a solution to defeating the monks in the Lie of the Land, deducing that the only way to stop them is to sacrifice Bill. The Doctor claims that her way of thinking means she clearly hasn't changed, but her thought process isn't too different from his in Series 8. Like the Doctor, she's going through a tumultuous journey of self-discovery and healing, and the Doctor, rather selfishly, shuts her down after she makes what is absolutely a huge step in the right direction. She calls out how the Doctor's idea of goodness comes down to vanity and being overly sentimental and arrogant. And indeed, the Doctor's arrogance does end up being his downfall in the series finale. At the end of The Lie of the Land, Missy shows genuine remorse for the people she's killed in the past. It's easy to become blinded to the problems with your behaviour while you're in that dark place, and it's only once you're getting out of it, you question how you could drown out all the guilt and reason in your head. One episode later, Missy gains full control of the Doctor's TARDIS, and she uses it to rescue the Doctor. She doesn't travel around the universe causing chaos, she doesn't turn it into a paradox machine. She takes the TARDIS where she needs to go, and accepts that she'll have to go back into the vault. When would any previous Master behave like this? Yes, she could be playing the long game, but again, she wanted to try and change with no reason to do so. The Doctor has been apprehensive towards her up until this point, but is genuinely taken aback by her acceptance that this was a one-off thing. So the Doctor keeps her in the TARDIS, doing maintenance work while also getting to watch his adventures firsthand. He uses hearing the music as a metaphor for her never truly appreciating the beauty in the universe. Music can convey love and happiness and memories in a way words never could. A song can help you see the way the world could be. And indeed, Missy has started seeing the way things could be. When she starts crying without knowing why, she half-jokingly remarks that it must be some evil trick to manipulate the Doctor. She's so caught up in the way things have always been, and yet the fact that she's become self-aware about her behaviour shows that she is genuinely changing her mind. And the Doctor has hope. His sense of reason is telling him not to get ahead of himself, but his oldest friend in the universe is starting to turn a corner, and he wants to believe she can change. So, he gives her a chance. He lets her go on an adventure of her own to see how she does, and really tries to sell the idea to Bill. When telling Bill about the Master, he almost deliberately switches between referring to them as he and she, showing how he genuinely considers Missy a different person from the Master he once knew.
But he was too busy banning them. I don't think she ever saw anything.
It's on this adventure Missy meets her past self, and suddenly she's face to face with the legacy she's leaving behind. She's literally in two minds, and spends the episode battling with her internal conflict. Part of her wants to embrace the familiarity of the life she's always known, but another part of her wants to continue taking that step in the right direction, and Missy's actions in this episode represent that perfectly. There are so many subtleties in Michelle Gomez's performance that perfectly encapsulate Missy's internal conflict. When she goes to kill the Cyberman attacking the Doctor, she hesitates, not wanting to accidentally shoot him. When the Doctor yells at the Masters to get them to turn around, she freezes for a moment. While the Doctor gives his speech, she really wants her past self to listen to him. The return of the Master has come at a very delicate point in Missy's journey of healing. She was just starting to turn a corner and was really starting to gain the trust of the Doctor. When you are in the process of getting better, it is incredibly easy for even the smallest of things to undo years of progress, and that's what the return of the Master represents. It puts into context just how far Missy has come, and the delicacy that comes with the healing process. Missy eventually decides to stand with the Doctor. She literally turns her back on her past self, turns around just as she's out of hell, only to be killed by her past self. For one shining moment, she saw the way the world could be, but now is confronted with the way it is, and all she can do is laugh. Laugh at herself for being delusional enough to go against the way things have always been, to trust the Doctor, to genuinely believe in herself for once. It's a beautifully tragic end for the character, and what's worse is that the Doctor never knew she wanted to stand with him in the end, that his influence and work paid off, that his fight to do what's right wasn't pointless. Missy's character arc is beautifully done. Her journey of healing and growing is portrayed realistically and beautifully. It was a fantastic direction to take the Master at this point in the show, and it ties into the overall themes of the Capaldi era. Which leads me quite smoothly on to... Acceptance is a major recurring theme across the 12th Doctor era, particularly identity and self-acceptance. Every main character has some narrative of them accepting who they are or who they're meant to be. We've already been through the Doctor's arc in Series 8, how he has a midlife crisis of sorts, before finally embracing the fact that he's not the all-important god he spent centuries cementing himself as. With that arc done, he's back to being a cosmic hobo running aimlessly around the universe. Except now, his motivations are heavily influenced by his relationship with Clara. Clara in Series 9 is fundamentally not a good companion for the Doctor. The Doctor's companion is supposed to be their anchor to provide some balance and ordinariness to the Doctor's travels, to keep them grounded, and Clara does the complete opposite. She pushes the Doctor further and further from reality and reason, and he does the same with her. In The Angels Take Manhattan, the episode before the Doctor properly meets Clara, River says this,
"One psychopath per TARDIS, don't you think?"
Which ends up being a really subtle piece of foreshadowing, as we see what happens when two indistinguishable travellers stick together, disregarding reason. A lot of Series 9's narratives involve the Doctor's morality and power being tested. The Witch's Familiar teases the idea of him killing young Davros to save Clara. Before the Flood has him trying to break the laws of time because Clara told him to. The Girl Who Died sees him cursing another being with immortality, and the Zygon Inversion ends with him diffusing a war with nothing but his sheer aura, only to reveal he's done this several times before. And in the finale, the Doctor finally gets pushed over the edge. Clara dies, and he blames himself as he's trapped in an endless hell. The castle in the confession dial is actually a pretty perfect summary of the Doctor's life. Running up and down shifting corridors from a monster, trying to run from the reminders of those he loses, but they follow him everywhere. His only way out is to either confess his secrets or break an unbreakable wall, a fabulous metaphor for dealing with grief. And the Doctor takes the long way round. He lives the same life over and over in the hope that this is the time when things turn out. It's an old song he sings again and again. Just like the Doctor's life, he keeps having to start over and over, never truly getting that happy ending. But it's good that he never gains that closure, and that the story begins all over again. As we see in the following episode what happens when the Doctor does make it out of his endless loop. A lot of people say Hellbent undoes the whole thematic narrative of Heaven Sent, and I think those people kinda misinterpret Heaven Sent's ending. Despite what Murray Gold's score might lead you to believe, the Doctor breaking the wall is not actually a triumphant victory. It's him spiraling, living the same day over and over, refusing to acknowledge or overcome his grief. The Doctor comes out of the grieving process completely unhealed. Instead, he's spiteful and ready for revenge. There was a prophecy on Gallifrey about a being called the Hybrid, two warrior races merged into one that would stand in the ruins of Gallifrey and break a billion hearts to heal its own. The Time Lords trapped the Doctor in the confession dial to try and find out about the Hybrid to prevent it, but all they did was cause the prophecy to unfold. The Doctor breaks all his own rules, unravels the web of time, all to save Clara. Because the Hybrid is the Doctor and Clara. They've become so indistinguishable and toxic, constantly pushing each other way too far, to the point where they're unrecognizable. The old versions of themselves died a long time ago. It's a fundamentally toxic relationship. They take things too far in their love for each other and merge into one life, losing themselves in the process. Clara, though, can at least accept when her time has come. We've seen how she was unwilling to accept outliving the Doctor, but she knows these adventures are all she has to live for now, and would rather die doing what she loves. The Doctor, on the other hand, can't accept living without Clara. He can't overcome his grief. He can't accept the way things are. And so the only way to kill the Hybrid is for him to forget her. All that remains of her memory is an old song. A sad song. A tragedy. But we sing it anyway. All this culminates in Series 10, where I think we meet the quintessential version of the Doctor. The 12th Doctor has spent his whole life grappling with his sense of self, struggling to accept who he is, his whole life being moulded and manipulated by Missy and Clara. But now, he's semi-retired. He meets a healthy balance between his search for goodness in Series 8 and his self-importance and worth in Series 9. He finally comes to accept who he is and what he stands for. But now, he seems to know his story is done and that he's nearing the end of his life, and starts meditating on the question of what he would die for. The Doctor in Series 10 is almost suicidal. There are many examples in this series where he seems almost eager to sacrifice himself to save others, obsessed with this idea of dying a hero. Episodes like Smile, Oxygen, Extremist, The Pyramids at the End of the World, The Live Land, and The Eaters of Light. Until finally, he gets caught in a fight he knows he can't win. His only options are to run away or spend as long as he can fighting off an endless army of Cybermen so a small group of people can live a little while longer. And the Doctor, having spent the last 10 series philosophizing over what his name and life means, accepts the path he chose. He spent this whole incarnation trying to figure out who he is, and now he knows. He reaches self-acceptance and feels happy going out this way, knowing all his work and anguish and turmoil meant something in the end. Just like with Heaven Sent, he breaks the cycle at last, but in a much more melancholic and embracing way. His final motto is,
Without hope, without witness, without reward.
He doesn't hope to gain adoration for this act. He knows the world will keep turning, but he's made his mark, however inconsequential. The Doctor has previously believed the universe owes him for all his work and suffering, but he accepts that the universe can't be bargained with. Even as he's dying, he hopes to get the reward of looking up at the stars one last time, but doesn't even get that. But he doesn't complain, he doesn't get up and try and change things. He accepts that this is how it ends. Despite everything, despite his satisfaction, this still isn't his perfect ending. But that's okay. The universe can't always be a fairy tale. Just like the real-life circumstances involving this finale, the Doctor is suddenly dropped into a Christmas special, where he meets the First Doctor, just as he was about to regenerate for the first time. And so, we get a sort of epilogue that discusses the Doctor's initial fascination with good always triumphing over evil, not realizing that it's him doing that good. The Doctor inspires himself in a bootstrap paradox. He chose the name Doctor as a promise to help others, as the word Doctor universally means healer and wise man. Because of him. The Doctor got his name from himself, chose to travel and do good because of himself. The name of the Doctor is a self-fulfilling prophecy that inspires countless others. And just like the First Doctor, the 12th Doctor realizes the importance of keeping the story going. He spent so long trying to find the balance between doing what's right and doing what he wants. And just like the First Doctor, his own legacy is what inspires him to keep going. He might want to die a hero, but to keep going, keep saving and inspiring others in spite of losing everything and everyone, that's the true heroic decision. The 12th Doctor died believing he'd let all his friends down, that his attempts to save Missy failed. And yet, he maintains hope and optimism for the future, passing on everything he learned in this incarnation to the next one, in the hope that they do things a little better this time. In case this is the one who finally breaks the unbreakable wall, the one who gets the happy ending, the one who doesn't let doubt consume them and finally makes it out of hell. The universe fails to be a fairy tale, but that's where the Doctor comes in. They help us see the way the world could be, in spite of the way it is. In a heartbreaking subversion of this narrative of self-acceptance, you've got Missy. In a way, Missy's arc is the antithesis of the Doctor's, and yet their arcs are still fundamentally the same. Whereas the Doctor concludes his story by embracing who he's always aimed to be, Missy goes against her roots. She refuses to accept the way her life has gone and embraces the way things could be. Both have the same general idea, contemplating on what it means to be good, what they would fight and die for, and both stories end in tragedy. The Doctor abandons his reputation of the immortal god, and Missy abandons her reputation of the irredeemable villain. They are truly the same, more alike than either of them would have cared to previously admit, and both die happy that they made the right decision in the end. Without hope, without witness, without reward. After losing Clara and River, Missy is the only person left in the Doctor's life remotely similar to him. He believes he's learned from the mistakes of the past and wants to try and turn her around. Given the Doctor's suicidal tendencies across Series 10, him teaching Missy to be good could also be him training his replacement. The downfall of both Clara and Missy is that they become too much like the Doctor, but in completely different ways. But at the end of the day, their downfall still comes down to overconfidence, just like the Doctor. His failure to save Bill before she's converted into a Cyberman comes down to him taking too long lecturing unnecessarily, or his foolish belief that explaining his morals could convince the Master to turn good. But the reason he survives is because he learns to accept his role in the universe, to know his own limits, and to simply try and do good without being corrupted by arrogance. And finally, you've got Bill. Bill is a lesbian, and so naturally the themes of identity and self-acceptance in the Capaldi era apply to her too. The whole first episode is dedicated to her doomed Yuri, and we see her becoming more comfortable and open with her identity over time. Then, in the series finale, she's converted into a Cyberman. Her identity is taken from her as she becomes a soulless, robotic shell, forced to look in the mirror and see a face she doesn't recognize as her own. It's a great metaphor for queer people who are forced to hide their true self to conform to societal norms. Or, for a bleaker interpretation, it could be seen as a metaphor for conversion therapy. In the 12th Doctor's first episode, Madame Vastra talks about how the Doctor wore a younger face to be accepted, and how she wears a veil for the same reason. Obviously, she's got the whole lizard thing going on, but the veil could also be an allegory for her sexuality, as Vastra is a lesbian living in Victorian London. Self-acceptance is the major recurring theme of the 12th Doctor era, and it's very fitting that his first and final adventures both contain queer allegories. Bill's narrative ends with the universe literally saying, "Fuck you, undoomed your Yuri," as she's freed from her monochrome prison and travels the universe with the woman she loves. There's also the Doctor and Bill's final interaction, which I love so much, and a lot of people claim is weird and forced, but I disagree.
You know how I'm usually all about women and kind of people my own age.
Yeah?
Glad you knew that.
she's just glad the doctor saw her for who she is. Bill wasn't out to her foster mum, but she was out to the doctor. She's happy the doctor accepted her for who she is, didn't question her, didn't deny her feelings, treated her just like he'd treat anyone else. Particularly at this point, where her identity has been taken from her, it means a lot that the doctor still sees who she is under the Cyberman exterior. I do wish more than anything that we got to hear this line in a Cyberman voice, but can't win them all. So yeah, those are all the major themes of the Capaldi era. Now, a few of you may have noticed a couple of references to a certain musical sprinkled throughout this video, and that was very much by design. So let's talk about the narrative of the 12th Doctor era as a whole, and the parallels it draws to a certain tale in Greek mythology. It's time for... The Doctor is Orpheus-coded. But the 12th Doctor era in particular has some quite strong parallels to the tale of Hadestown. Frankly, I just thought of this comparison recently and saw a chance to connect my favourite Doctor to my favourite musical and fucking jumped at the opportunity. It's called autism, babe, get with the program. Hadestown is a musical adaptation of the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice, a classic tale in Greek mythology. I'll give a very brief summary for those who don't know. Orpheus meets a woman called Eurydice. He falls in love and they get married. But Eurydice dies and gets taken to the underworld, ruled by Hades, a cruel, heartless tyrant. Orpheus travels to the underworld to save her, and does so by singing a song so beautiful it touches the hearts of the gods themselves. Hades lets Orpheus and Eurydice go, under one condition. Orpheus has to walk back out of Hadestown, with Eurydice behind him the whole time. He can't turn back to see if she's there, because if he turns around and she is behind him, she'll be sent back to the underworld forever. Orpheus makes it out of the underworld, and turns around to see if she was really behind him the whole time. She was. And now she's gone. Hadestown is a fantastic adaptation of this classic Greek tragedy, but I won't go too much into that as it absolutely deserves its own video. Wink wink nudge nudge. I'm just going to answer the question most of you are undeniably thinking right now. What the f does this have to do with Eyebrow Man? Orpheus is a beacon of hope. To Eurydice, to Hades, to the audience. He holds the power to take down gods. Not with weapons, with words. With love. Orpheus is committed and passionate and will stop at nothing to save the woman he loves. The universe fails to be a fairy tale, but that's where these heroes come in. They help us see the way the world could be, in spite of the way it is. The musical adaptation of this tale in particular has a striking parallel to the Doctor. Hadestown is self-aware that it's a stage play. The characters acknowledge that they're telling the same story over and over. Orpheus is locked in an endless cycle of almost getting the good ending he deserves before the story begins once again. Just like the Doctor. They keep having to start over and over again, repeating the same cycle time after time in the hope that this is the one where things turn out. And yet, it never does. The Doctor and Orpheus never truly get that happy ending. But, in a way, that's good. Orpheus being stuck in a never-ending cycle of turning back just before the finish line is tragic, yes, but what's the alternative? The story keeps going, and he becomes jaded by the way the world is. He becomes like Hades. Same with the Doctor. They spend their life chasing after the people they inevitably lose, chasing happiness and closure in a life that never ends, and yet they remain optimistic. They keep telling the story, maintaining that hope, because the alternative is so much worse. In Orpheus's song that he sings to Hades, he sings about the feeling of seeing for the first time the woman who you just know you were destined to be with. How it's a feeling you can't understand or explain, but it's like she's someone you'd always known. There were no words for the way he felt, only a song that carries all that love and all those memories. Memories become stories when we forget them, but some of them become songs. When Hades starts singing along to Orpheus's song, Orpheus is genuinely surprised. It's almost as if he expected the song to fail, and that this would be his final time singing it. In a version of the Doctor's speech in The Doctor Falls that never made it to broadcast, the Doctor scoffs to himself after the Masters walk away, as if to say, of course it wasn't going to work, why did I bother? But it's just another part of his unwavering desire to fail doing the right thing, the exact message he tried to communicate to them. To already know your fate, and yet still try anyway, as if this might be the time when things turn out. Orpheus' song is beautiful enough to touch the heart of Hades, and likewise, the Doctor's speech is beautiful enough to touch the heart of Missy. Hades and the Master are presumed to be irredeemable villains, a reminder of who our protagonist could become if they grow jaded to the way the world is. And yet, they serve as a reminder that hope lies within everyone, that love is an undying force that can survive millennia of turmoil, that words win wars. Missy is convinced to turn good and to fight alongside the Doctor, only for her past self to kill her before she gets the chance. It's a tragedy, but the story was written long ago. Like the Doctor, she almost changed the way it is, very nearly saw the way the world could be, only for doubt to be her downfall when she turns away from freedom. Specifically, the Master's doubt that he could ever change enough to side with the Doctor, his denial to the way things could be. Orpheus turns around for Eurydice because the Orpheus that never turns around is the Orpheus that never loved her enough to travel to Hades Town in the first place. Missy turns around because the Master that doesn't turn her back on her past self is the one that would never promise to turn good in the first place. Without hope, without witness, without reward. Orpheus may have lost everything he loves, but it's easy to forget that he still succeeded. He wrote the song that brought the world back into tune. Same with the Doctor. He lost everything he loved, but succeeded in his mission. He fell where he stood, protecting those innocent people because it was the kind thing to do, and he did manage to turn the Master good. Since I'm talking about Hades Town, it would be remiss of me to not mention the episode where the Doctor literally goes to hell for the woman he loves, or the episode where he's trapped in an endless loop of losing over and over. But we see in that episode that to break the loop is to unleash hell itself. When the Doctor finally breaks the wall, he's ruined by grief and anger. He's unrecognizable. He becomes Hades. He grew so afraid of losing the woman he loves, and he took the long way down, kept his head low and his back bending as he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. But the thing that he's building his walls around is already lost. Eurydice's fate was sealed the moment she went to Hades Town, and Clara's fate was sealed the moment she took the chronolock. Tragic as that is, to deny the way things are runs the risk of becoming a corrupted tyrant. And yet, it was still better to try and fail than to not try at all, because that's what love is. And that's why it's essential for the Doctor's life to remain a tragedy, a Pyrrhic victory. We know how the story ends. It's not a surprise when the Doctor dies and the wheel keeps turning. And yet, that's the beauty of it all. It's a reminder to keep fighting, to see the way the world could be, to know how it ends, and yet still begin to sing it again, as if it might turn out this time. I learned that from a friend of mine. As I said at the start of this video, the last couple of years have been a very formative time for me. When I was initially working on my big 12th Doctor video, I felt like I was just properly beginning my journey of figuring out who I was, what I wanted to do and be. I was deep in the 12th Doctor hyperfixation trenches at the time, and the themes of growth and self-discovery really resonated with me and inspired me. I've spent the last few years dealing with a lot of fears of inadequacy. When I made that video, I was nearing 20, with fuck all to show for it. I'd wasted my teenage years rotting away inside my bedroom, and was incredibly emotionally stunted. I behaved like an absolutely insufferable dickhead and lost pretty much all my friends, and for a time, I was worried that that was it. That my life was already over at 19. That I had potential, and I wasted it. Those insecurities haven't entirely gone away, but I have massively turned my life around. I've been going outside, making friends, pursuing my interests, learning new things, catching up on all the life I missed out on when I was younger, because I was just so convinced I had no real motivation or prospects. Fast forward a couple of years, and I'm enrolling at some of the best performing arts universities in the UK, something I'd never thought I was capable of. It's very easy to get stuck in your own head, especially when your most formative years were ruined by a global pandemic and immense agoraphobia. But it really is never too late to turn things around, to find the things you enjoy, as long as you really want to change. And that's a big reason why the Capaldi era means so much to me. It serves as a reminder that sometimes you just have to try and do what's right. Sometimes you can spend years looking for an answer that was right in front of you the whole time. But the journey there is the important thing. The things you learn along the way, the people you meet, the mistakes you make and grow from. That's why anyone can be the Doctor. I'm going to be honest, I don't think anything I ever make is going to top this. At least in terms of how much I wrote from the heart here. I actually met Peter Capaldi a few months ago. He was doing a music tour a few months back, and I saw a few days before his Nottingham gig that there were still tickets available. So I impulsively bought tickets and then travelled halfway across the country to see him in Nottingham. He was great, obviously. He puts on a really good show. You could also meet him after the show, and of course, I stayed for that. I queued for an hour to meet him, and then I finally got to the front and just completely lost my words. I did manage to tell him how much the 12th Doctor and his story of self-acceptance meant to me, and he was just like, alright, cool. You could tell he was very tired, which, fair enough, but he still made an effort with everyone, and he was a delight. So, as awkward as I was, it's a moment I will forever cherish, in the same way that I cherish the 12th Doctor and how much his tenure means to me. But yeah, wow, I did not expect the video to even be this long. But here we are. This bit is unscripted, can you tell? Thank you very much for sitting through all of this. And no matter where the world takes us next, always remember, don't be lasagna. Have a good game month, everyone.